Vancouver.mediacollab.ca.
So we thought that what we would do is just ask you to ask us some questions, find out what kind of information that you would like, and we will all speak to you.
When did you first start noticing these reports of abuse?
I think it's been ongoing, but I didn't have specifics about this until recently. It's just that amongst different service providers, people have said for a long time now that they don't think that women are safe at First United and don't recommend women going there. I had no idea that that there were 6 sexual assaults reported to the police since October the 30th until the last couple of weeks.
Do you think the fact that these are wet shelters, or they allow people in who are maybe intoxicated or high, does that have anything to do with the assaults, do you think?
The fact that they're wet shelters?
Yeah, so they're letting in people that may be drunk or high.
Right, no, I don't think that has anything to do with that. I think that what needs to happen is not so much the focus on First United Church as just one example of where women have been sexually assaulted, but on funders to look at ensuring that women are prioritised in terms of how safe they can be. I think that at that time when First United opened, that there was a big focus on homelessness in the city of Vancouver, and First United stepped forward with an answer to allow the province and the city off the hook. And I think that it's inappropriate, unethical, and negligent to have that many people in a space that is not equipped to house people.
What would you like to see?
Well, I think that priority is that housing in the city of Vancouver be put back on the agenda as a priority, and that the province and the city, kind of stop thinking that it's now dealt with because you've warehoused people. And on top of that, I would like to know, in terms of shelters and housing, how many women are actually housed in adequate shelters, and where that funding is going to.
Are there any women-only shelters that are functioning, and how full are they?
There's women-only shelters, Powell Place and
Yukon has a women's only,
which is out of the downtown east side. We operate a shelter which is only from 11 at night till 8 in the morning, which is one of the barriers that women have. But our funding only allows us to operate for that amount of time, so women don't want to get kicked out at 7:30 in the morning.
I think one of the things too that we really need to focus on is that there are heat shelters that are also funded through BC Housing and so on, and they have 40 people in them, not 240 people. And so obviously they're a safer place than to have a place that's so severely overcrowded. And the other thing is that we need to make no mistake about this. Shelter, no matter if it's a heat shelter or if it's at First United Church or anywhere else, is not housing. So let's make that very clear, that what we really need is a place for women to be safe. And in the meantime, we need 24-hour shelter for women, and we certainly don't want anyone to make a mistake and think that that is housing.
This release seems to suggest that the people at First United did nothing about it when they heard of the reports. Can you just expand on that a little bit?
Well, I think that our kind of outrage really came because we had come across this information through the VPD that there was 6 reported sexual assaults. And we know, working in the anti-violence field, that when you say 6 reported sexual assaults, that 1 in 10 sexual assaults are reported. So we know that it's happening more than those 6. So that's our big concern, and that at First United Church, their response has pretty much been business as usual. I mean, they've talked about they have a women-only area where I think they increased the beds by a few beds, but women report that men have access to that space anyway. And it's really not the point. The point is, if you are operating a service that you just where you find that some of those people are not safe, then you need to do something dramatically different to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And women need to be prioritized in this. I mean, we understand that First United Church is a shelter of last resort, that what they term to be the most challenging But that doesn't mean to say that it's okay for women to be sexually assaulted in that space. And for years, women have been calling for a 24-hour space, and it needs to happen. Women in this community need to have a 24-hour space where they can go for safety, day or night.
Is anything like that even in the works, or is this the first time it's come up as a possibility?
It's not the first time it's come up as a possibility. I know Ellen has worked with women in the community for years, and that was part of what she was trying to do in this community. I think people have talked about it all through the Picton situation, that people talked about the need for safety for women. I know Wish has been, that's part of their plan, is to have a 24-hour space because violence doesn't happen between the hours that Wish is open.
So why, it seems like it would be obvious that we should have one in the
Right.
city. Why do we not?
Because there's the funders. I mean, that's the end of the day. People have to prioritize that in terms of the funders have to prioritize it.
So the province, the city.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also think it looks at the bigger picture. I mean, we don't have enough shelter or housing for men or women. It isn't only women. But the problem is that women are really vulnerable. They are the minority in the population in the area and in any of the shelters. And there has to be much more emphasis on women's only space.
And I think the other question is justification or rationalization, is that the statistics haven't been there to show that women need the shelters, but women often are, couch surfing. We've heard that time and again. There was a meeting at the Friendship Center that talked about the numbers that are couch surfing, and often women will, sleep with someone in order to get a safe night. I mean, that's not just the downtown east side. That's throughout Metro and across Canada right now. And so that's the justification of some funding organizations, is that we don't have the stats to show that women need shelters. But the fact is, there's been a over 20% increase of sexual attacks on women just over the past year that Chief Jim too has talked about. But as Alice has said, we're talking about 1 out of 10, so it's much more significant than this. And Walk for Justice Sister had a meeting at the Aboriginal Mother Center when we were first elected in 2008 with Mayor Gregor Robinson and myself, and they were calling for an Aboriginal women's 24-hour emergency shelter because women were going naked and still going missing. And I think if you look at the bulletin board at First United Church, you'll see that there's more women are going missing. And the housing that we need, the permanent housing we need, is because of exactly these kinds of violent situations that women find themselves in. And as we know, the shelter portion of the welfare check doesn't even get you a nest alone these days.
One of the things that we think is really important is that we have a drop-in shelter, which is quite like what happens at First United in terms of being able to just be there, and you don't have to register, and you don't have to sign in, you don't have to sign out, but you can circulate through that shelter. So essentially what we need is a drop-in shelter where women can come and go anonymously and that they are safe. But it has to be women's only, fully women-centered service.
Can I just ask you to introduce yourselves? I have to leave soon.
Sure, I'm Kate Gibson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Wish Drop-In Center Society.
I'm Alice Kendall from the Downtown Eastside Women's Center.
Thank you.
Could you just spell your name as well?
Alice, A-L-I-C-E, K-E-N-D-A-L-L.
So while we're waiting for this 24-hour shelter to come about, what are you calling on First United to do? What should they do at the first priority right now?
Well, the priority is to fully segregate one section of the church and have women only there. So that there are only women staff and women only, and no access to men.
Because right now it's not fully segregated.
No, and there are women in both areas. And one of the problems with the women's only area is that women have to be gone by 8:30 in the morning. And whereas they can stay longer in the non-segregated area. So obviously, if you're come in the middle of the night, the place that you're going to want to sleep, no matter how safe or unsafe it is, is the area where you can sleep the longest. So the plan would be, I think, to have that area of First United that can be segregated, make it women's only, and make it so that women can sleep at least till noon or later.
Sorry, just let's back around for 412 shelter and the bridge shelter and those kinds of shelters. Do women have to register and sign in and sign out?
So for the 412 shelter, that's the women's centre shelter that operates from 11 at night till 8 in the morning. So that's, you don't have to register.
Okay, so you can come in at any time?
But for the other shelters, Bridge and Powell Place, yeah, there's, you have to phone, there has to be a bed for you.
Okay.
Why such a limited time at night for the women's shelter? Why do they have to leave so early in the morning?
The women's center
Yeah,
shelter?
yeah, or even at First United, they have time restrictions, they have to leave early. Why is that?
Well, for our shelter, we share a space, so
Okay.
it converts to the life skill centre during the day. So we're borrowing the space basically at night time. That's what we're funded for.
Do you have any idea on the numbers of women accessing this First United shelter?
I think this, yeah, 30 on that.
Yeah.
Roughly 30. And the other heat shelters they don't go to? Or?
I think they do. I think that they're all shelter, they're all mixed shelters, the heat shelters.
So is there many First Nations, Métis, or Inuit women staying at these shelters, or who in contact with these?
In terms of the...
In terms of the abuse? In terms of the abuse that's been
Are
happening?
they staying at First United? Yes.
How many are there?
I don't know the stats for that particular shelter. I think it's the general population, like as with the women's centre shelter, it's usually around 70% are Aboriginal women, because that's the population of the community. But I don't know specifically with First United, if anybody knows.
So Ellen, you're moving a motion on this, or you're trying to get a motion on the agenda? Or?
A motion will be on the council agenda on Tuesday, and I'm calling for a 24-hour emergency shelter for women. I'm also calling for optional separation for women in all the shelters and full security for women in all the shelters. This is not new. This has been going on for a while. This was raised to me by one of the Walk for Justice sisters, that she had observed and was able to intervene in the situation at First United Church. But I think it's much bigger than First United Church. We need to have the statistics, and I've asked Chief Jim Chu for those statistics, and I'm hoping to receive them this afternoon. I think that the City Hall has been asked for a while now to do a gender lens on all our work, and the specifics of a gender lens on housing and homelessness is one that's particularly been called for. So I think that we need to do something immediately to ensure the safety of all women. And I've actually heard of a rape of a man in one of the shelters as well. So security issues are a key concern in any shelter, and I think that now there's a new premier. She needs to come out and say what she's going to do to ensure there's housing for everyone and there's adequate income assistance for everyone so that they can get safe, secure shelters and transition from them into housing.